All right, here's something that we can talk about that may branch off to some interesting discussion or not. We'll see. Someone made a comment to me about Lazarus versus Lazarus, and I was going to reply to him. Let me see if I can find that comment real quick. All right, Smash Tube dude um, says, I like how you go back to other preachers and things that remember the words the way you do. I have a video I did a while ago that I have not seen anyone else mention. That is Lazarus and Lazareth. It was Lazarus come forth. Jesus rose him from the dead. Lazarus was the poor man. I did the same in my video showing others use the name. One was even in a skit where Lazarus, the formerly dead guy, Lazarus was formerly dead guy talking to people. So I was going to give him a comment on this. And I was going to say, years ago, I was going to do a video on Lazarus versus Lazarus. And I didn't because when I looked into it, I couldn't justify it because at that time, reality was coughing up some reason, some excuse for it that, it could be explained away. So if I were to do a video, say this has changed, anybody who were to take a few moments to really research it would see, well, here's a plausible explanation. And that plausible explanation at the time was possibly the name Lazarus, like it was Lazarus, but Lazarus came up in one of the Gospels, and maybe a commentary note had said some scholars interpret the name to be spelled Lazareth rather than Lazarus, so because you're translating in Hebrew and all that stuff. So it was some sort of thing like there's discrepancy or disagreement about how the name should be pronounced or spelled in English or how it should be translated. It was something along those lines. Or maybe one of the Gospels had Lazarus where the others didn't, or maybe, the rich guy, there's two Lazarus. There's two L guys in the New Testament with the same name. And I've always known, as my Bible major passed, that the two guys were named the same, but they were two different stories, two different incidents. One is where Jesus is telling the parable about the servant named Lazarus and the rich man. And the rich man ends up going to hell, and Lazarus, it doesn't say heaven, but he's in, with Abraham, he's on the good side of the river or the gulf or the gap, and he can see his old master, the rich guy, on the other side, and he's not so happy. He's thirsty. It's not good. So there was that Lazarus, and then there was the one where, the Lazarus who had died and was dead for a few days, probably starting to smell, and Jesus comes strolling up late. He was in no hurry, and everybody's just crying, said, oh, if you had only gotten here sooner, maybe you could have saved him, but it's too late now. And Jesus is like, why are you all crying? Lazarus, come forth. And he comes out, and everybody's amazed that, he's alive all of a sudden, out of the cave or whatever. And then that, from a literary standpoint, if you're doing literary interpretations of the Bible, is a direct foreshadowing of Jesus dying on the cross for 3 days and coming forth out of the cave. It's definitely a wink wink. It's a literary technique if we were to approach the Bible with that literary critique eye. Anyway, I had always known that the two guys were named the same, but not to be confused as the same person, for me, growing up as a Bible major. That being said, I did not do, when I started hearing, ever since the Mandela effect and reality shifting on me, I heard the name Lazarus, and I was going to do a Mandela effect video, but when I researched it years ago, it didn't warrant me doing one. I should have done a video. I should have said, hey, let's just air this out, so if anybody's doing a video, we can discuss it Makes me wonder what would have happened if I had done that video, if I would have anchored in. There's this idea that maybe really talking about it and putting official videos out and anchoring it in kind of prevents me from sliding around in these different type realities. But I went ahead and looked at it again, and this reality that I happen to be visiting for however long, this time Lazarus makes no logical sense. There's no rationale. There's nothing. I looked at all those explanations that could possibly explain it away, the explanations that prevented me from doing a video years ago about Lazarus or Lazarus. Now that it doesn't apply, let me go into what I mean. All right, this one brings the point home that I'm trying to make here. So this guy from May 16, 2025 is angry. And if you go into this link, he's complaining that preachers or teachers are being lazy because he's noticed that people are using Lazarus rather than Lazarus. And he's bothered by the proper pronunciation in the pulpit. His complaint to the world is, why are all these people so lazy that they don't take the time to look at the spelling of the word and the name and understand how it's pronounced and say Lazarus? He's upset about that. He's like, my God, is everybody just lazy? Am I the only one who's doing that properly? I get his frustration because this isn't just a small case. It's happening all the time. And my theory, after having been in the different realities so many times and seeing this stuff so many times, is that now, like years ago, I was in a reality where the Lazarus and Lazarus name pronunciation had a logical explanation. There was a built-in, for whatever reason, reality gave its way out. And probably before that, it was strictly, like 100% of the time, Lazarus in one reality and Lazarus in another reality. And the two came together, and somebody in the tech room, the IT guys who managed this reality, they had seen the crash of these realities and these words and came up with an explanation to help pacify people like this guy who's upset that nobody knows how to pronounce the name. They gave him a reason to understand why it sometimes happened. Like sometimes scholars are interpreting or translating it as Lazarus and some are as Lazarus, or some kind of explanation to pacify these guys. Now this reality, not so much. This reality is 100%. There is no mistake. The proper name is Lazarus, U.S., Lazarus. From the beginning and all back in time, it's been Lazarus for both of the dudes, the rich man and the servant, and also the one who rose from the dead. Both of them named the same, both of them Lazarus. From beginning to end, there is no, in this timeline that we're in right now, and this could change tomorrow, but in this timeline, at this very moment, on this Sunday morning, Lazarus is the only logical explanation, and Lazarus has no purpose in being uttered. Lazarus is in this reality right now for no good reason. And my theory is that Lazarus is a bleed through. Our consciousnesses, our spirits, whatever, we've been in these other realities, so the echo of those realities bleed through our memories or some other bleed through effect. Somehow we are picking up on the Lazarus reality. Somehow that has made its way into this reality strong enough that we have all of these Lazarus running around. But Lazarus is dead. Lazarus is the one who's supposed to be alive in this reality. All right, I think I was on pause. I just said, let's go through the residual. There's no reason for Lazarus to exist in this reality. There's no explanation that I can find. No out. Reality hasn't created an out. Let's stop for a moment and just talk about that. How reality seems to be driven by controllers or has a mind of its own, and it does give itself an out. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've done research on residuals and Mandela effects and looked at the way reality was and said there's no excuse for this. This makes no sense. Logically, everything's out the window. And then a week later, a month later, whatever, some time passes, and all of a sudden there's a valid explanation. There's a valid reason for why reality has glitched or doesn't make any sense. All of a sudden, so it's like somebody took extra time to build in an explanation for why things were the way they were. And this Lazarus thing had that explanation for a while. Now it is gone. So let's just go through a few of these. Here's Fish Eater's website talking about the parable of the dives, rich man and Lazarus. But notice here in the text, they're saying, and Abraham said to him, Son, remember that thou didst receive good things in thy lifetime, and likewise Lazarus evil things. But now he is. Now, if you think that this person is referring to Lazarus, but that the Bible version says Lazarus, it isn't. I checked all the versions in Bible Hub and Gateway, all the versions, every version, and all of the Gospels, every single. And when we say synoptic Gospels, we mean Matthew, Mark, and Luke, not John, but Matthew, Mark, and Luke parallel each other in stories and events and parables. None of the synoptic Gospels and none of the versions of the Bible anywhere could I find Lazarus as a legitimate, quotable name. Let that sink in. This does not exist at this moment of time in this reality. Lazarus has no business being quoted in any way, shape, or form.